All right, Kristin and Tim, welcome to the Sipping Point. I'm so excited to explore all things Maryland Wine Month. As many of my listeners know, I am based here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland in Easton. And having lived in Maryland more than anywhere else that I've lived in my life, I consider myself, although not originally a Marylander honorary, I guess, at this point. And so thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to talk about wine.
Yes. So, Tim, I can't wait to get to you, and we're going to talk about your winery and your wines in a minute. But, Kristin, maybe you can give us a little background on Maryland Wine Month and what actually goes on in Maryland Wine Month. How can people get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Maryland Wine Month is a celebration of the 110 Maryland wineries that we have across the state. And it's a great reminder about the agricultural product that we have right here in our backyard. So, out of those 110, about 90 of them are using grapes here in Maryland, which is amazing. And so, it's really a chance to remind people to go out and actually experience the wineries. That's one of the best parts of a wine is actually going to the vineyard and seeing it, meeting the winemaker, and really learning about what they're doing. And so every year, MarylandWine.com, which is the association, actually puts together a list of any events that are happening in the month, if anybody's doing any type of promotion. And then from our side, with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, we try to help promote. And so we're working on kind of a campaign to help amplify the message of Maryland Wine Month.
Love that. And I know part of Maryland Wine Month is this big event called the Maryland Wine Experience in Frederick, Maryland. And that is the weekend of March 23rd, I believe. Tell us what people can do on that weekend. Can they still get tickets? What happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. It's actually the first, second, and third, and so it's the whole
Okay.
weekend. There's an option on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and there's a multitude of things that you can do. You can go down to Frederick and experience different wines that are available at the different restaurants downtown. You can attend some classes and actually dive deeper into your knowledge about wine. There's a grand tasting on Saturday that will feature over 20 different Maryland wineries. And then Sunday follows up with a wine themed brunch. And so, really, you can make a whole weekend out of it. You can go for one day. There are still tickets available, although I will say that they are starting to move. So, you definitely want to get on there and start purchasing.
I know. And with the weather just being starting to be spring like, it seems like the perfect time to get out and experience that. And one more thing, Kristin, I know you guys have such a fun social media presence out there, and you did something a little different. I think it's just this year, but it's called Something Tasty. And
Yeah.
you've had some sommeliers pair Maryland wines with Maryland foods. Tell us about how people can see those videos, and they're not just the same old pairings that you see every day.
That's right. So, through Maryland's Best, which is the marketing arm of Maryland Department of Agriculture, we are hosting Something Tasty, and it's spelled SOMM. And the idea is that we're working with sommeliers or wine educators and asking them to pair with iconic Maryland food. So, a little twist on the typical pairing. We reached out to companies like Otterbeins and Getz's, who does cowtails and caramel creams, and we're working with Old Bay. And so we're highlighting just the way that wine can be very approachable in all types of foods. It doesn't always have to be this fancy 5-course steak dinner. It can
Right.
literally be popping some Old Bay cheese puffs alongside a really nice beignet. So we're really excited to kind of highlight a more approachable way for people who are interested in wine and maybe don't really know where to get started with pairings. And there's so many great varietals in Maryland that you can really find something for every snack that's available. So every Wednesday, we're posting a new video on at MDS Best, and also the at Maryland Wine. The association is also posting these videos as well so that people can learn more about it.
That's great. And I love that because, I think sometimes people get intimidated. Wine has to be always fancy, and it doesn't. It can just be with
Yeah.
everyday foods, even junk food. So thank you for highlighting that. And everybody go check out their Instagram and Facebook pages for those fun videos. All right, Kristin, I hear Tim getting his wines ready. So I think we need to bring him into the party. Tim Seppi from Love Point Winery, thank you for joining us. We're talking all things Maryland wine, so we need to have a winemaker present. And you're not that far from me, even though we're on different screens here. You're just about a half an hour down the road in Ken Island. So, Tim, thanks for joining us. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about how your winery came to be. I know Kristin mentioned 110 wineries. I think when I moved to Maryland, there were only like 20 or 25 wineries. So it has grown so much over the course of the 20 years that I've been here. But Tim, how did you get started?
Well, Laurie, thank you for having me. This is Tim Seppi. I'm with the Love Point Vineyards and Winery here. We're on the northern tip of Kent Island, and I'll explain Kent Island in just a minute. But the way I got started was my grandfather immigrated from Italy to the United States during Prohibition. And so he would buy grapes and make his own wine in his basement. Of course, I wasn't around back then, but my father was. And my father would help him every now and then, and he would occasionally go down to the basement and sip a little bit until he spilled a bunch of it. And it happened to be Sangiovese, and I'll explain that in just a second. But he got a spanking he never forgot, and he never drank any wine after that. But I think it's in my blood, and Sangiovese specifically, because we grow that here. It's not an easy grape to grow in the whole eastern United States, but we're doing a good job at it, and I can explain why that is in just a minute.
Great. Well, we're kind of seeing a little of your background, but I know, having been to the winery, doing tastings there, and even leading a group in a tasting there, that you are surrounded by the most beautiful views of the Chesapeake Bay. Your location is ideal. So tell us a little bit about why that location gives you an advantage, or maybe even some challenges in making great wine.
Excellent question. So this is something in the vineyard industry called terroir, and it's the French word for the location where your grapes are grown. So that has to do with geography, the soil type, and the climate. Now, in California and other major wine growing regions in the world, they have one thing in common, that it's hot and dry. So what that does to grapevines is that they don't put all of their energy into leaves, but they'll put it into the fruit to make the best fruit that we see today in some of the best wines. Now, on the East Coast, we have kind of a different problem. We have lots of rain, lots of humidity. The soils are very fertile, and that's why you see farmers growing watermelon and corn and beans and all kinds of different things that they can't grow in California. So we in the Maryland wine business in the whole Eastern Coast, Virginia included, but Maryland specifically, we've come a long way in the last, I'd say, 10 years. And I would argue that we are better grape growers and winemakers because it's a challenge. Now, back to the terroir here at Love Point, we're surrounded by water pretty much. And so what that does is create a breeze all day long. It could be very dead calm someplace, 5 miles either direction. But we have a breeze. And what that does is it dries out the mold, the humidity and the mildew that you see all over your yard and garden every morning. So what that humidity does is it makes a prime for things like mold and mildew, which gets on the leaves, gets on the grapes, and that's the bad thing about the whole East Coast. So we've learned, the Maryland wine industry has helped us learn how to take care and hedge excess leaves, because the grapes have the nutrients, they have the water flow, and so they put all their energy into the leaves. So we cut them off, leave mostly just fruit. And that's how the majority of the East Coast wine industry or grape growing industry works.
Yes. And lots of the great wine regions of the world that I really appreciate, like the Rhone and even parts of, I was just doing a seminar on Chile, have these great currents and breezes that, like you said, will keep the vines dry so that you don't have to worry about things like mold or other things that can affect the grapes. And when were deciding what to taste today, because I'm getting thirsty. I was very intrigued by the fact that you have, and I don't know if I realized this last time I visited you, you have a Gruner Veltliner, which is a grape typically associated with Austria. And I call them groovies because it's easier to say, but I love the groovies of Austria. And yours is delicious. So tell me a little bit about what motivated you to feature this grape. And is this like an up and coming grape for Maryland?
I hope so. It's not grown very widely in Maryland yet, but it's easy to grow and it goes well with oysters. And by the way, April, we'll have oysters here every weekend with some music and we'll be serving the Gruner. And I love how you pronounce it both ways.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
and so it's a lighter body and it's more citrus and crisp and even with hints of white pepper. Like I say, so um, everybody's taste in wine is different and unique. It's not that it's bad or good unless it has flaws. We as winemakers, we recognize flaws right away. And
Right.
so we here at Love Point, we don't sell any wine with flaws. We rarely even make it, but sometimes mistakes happen.
Yeah, and this type of crisp white, if you are listening and you already love Pinot Grigio, you love Sauvignon Blanc, I don't know, Kristen, what your favorite white is, but those sort of crisp acidity whites are great with anything you could squeeze a lemon on, I always say to people. So you already said oysters, which is one thing that we love. But also any salads or seafoods, even like some fish tacos. I could see this going with so many great foods and especially our Maryland seafood.
Very good. That's the comparison with Sauvignon Blanc is a good one. In Australia, when they have oyster festivals, that's what they serve is Sauvignon Blanc, and so this Gruner Veltliner is very similar
Absolutely.
in body. Yes.
Awesome. Kristen, what is your favorite pairing for a crisp white like this? Do you have any favorite Maryland seafoods or preparations?
Oh yeah, like I'm thinking of like a light pasta with like a lemon butter sauce and
Ooh,
some like either oysters or crab meat, like just real
yes.
simple, but so refreshing. And I love a cold glass of white with that.
Yeah, that's a really great choice. So, Tim, I know we didn't get to this yet, but I just have a quick question. I know Love Point is the place that you're in, but your winery kind of came out of a love story between you and Karen. And I love, a couple doing this winery together. I mean, I think that's so inspirational probably for a lot of people. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you guys meet? And how did you decide that you're also going to work together? Because that probably has its challenges as well.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. So I've been growing grapes and making wine as a hobby for about 30 years. And on the southern end of Kent Island is called Bloody Point. And there was an old vineyard there that was not doing well, wasn't producing grapes. And I offered the owners, because I was living nearby at the time, and I offered the owners to go in and revive it, make good grapes and good wine out of that, and they accepted it. And Karen was also working for this big mansion that was there, and the owners had asked Karen to go out and help me in the vineyard a few times, and she kept coming out there and bothering me and asking all these questions, uh, and anyway, I don't want to cut to the new wine, but the next wine we have is called Bloody Point as a memento for us falling in love. But before we get to that, shortly after we met, we sort of fell in love, and then I bought land up here at Love Point and planted the first 10 acres in 2015 and then another 5 acres in 2016. So we have 15 acres total, and started selling wine in 2020, a new tasting room in 2022, until here we are today. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take the
Yeah, give
camera
us
and
a view
pan.
because it is I loved my visit there. It was such a gorgeous view. I mean, to be on the water and drinking great wine, that is just the best in my
That's
mind.
a new pier this year, and this is actually the Chester River.
Okay.
And it's sandy bottom, so you could go out there and swim. And here's our new tasting room. It's obviously very close to the water.
It's really
Seats about 30
nice.
people, but a lot of folks like to sit down here in the
Oh, I see the
chair.
Adirondack chairs.
Yeah, so wine drinking is about good quality wine, but it's also the experience of where you are, who you're with, and what you're doing. And we try to make all that possible here at Love Point. It's not just
Well, it
about the
looks
wine.
like you're doing a great job, and I know I did experience that. So you brought up Bloody Point in the love story, and now the second wine that you gave to me so that we could talk about is called the Bloody Point Light. It is light, but it's a red wine. So tell me a little bit more about this.
So this is quite an interesting wine. You won't see this very often here in Maryland or Virginia or anywhere really. It is a so there's two types of grapevines. One is called vinifera, and those are your standard names like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's a specific variety. And lately, there's more production of hybrids, and you can think of your tomato plants that you plant. There's heirloom tomatoes and there's hybrid tomatoes, and there's different qualities to each. And so the hybrids are increasing popularity because number one, they produce more fruit, just like your hybrid tomatoes. And number two, more importantly, I think, is that they're resistant to some of the diseases on the East Coast, like things
Ah,
you'll see in your own garden, like powdery mildew and those things. Now, this specific Bloody Point Light has a picture of the Bloody Point Lighthouse down at the old vineyard where Karen and I met, and our story is on the bottle. The wine that's in it is one of my favorites. It's called Noire. It's spelled Noiret, and
mm-hmm.
it's out of the university vineyard program at Cornell University. They're famous for it. They've produced hundreds of hybrids, and they're all very good. 80% of the wines grown on the East Coast are hybrids out of Cornell University. Now, this Noire is, think of as Pinot Noir, and that's what it is. It's a hybrid of two grape roots. They graft them together. One's a Pinot Noir, and the other is a variety that's resistant to diseases and other things.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
called Noire, and
I was going to say it
it's
really reminds me a lot of a Pinot Noir. It has all that awesome red fruit up front. It's very elegant. It's soft. It's not too tannin it. You know, you're getting that sort of dry astringency from bigger reds like Cabernet or Petite Syrah or that sort of thing. This is just smooth, and I could see if you're having a party or a dinner that this red will appeal to a lot of different kinds of red wine lovers in my mind.
absolute well said. It's
Yeah.
silky and rounded, but it doesn't have that astringency that some of the Cabernet Sauvignon and other reds have.
Great. And if people want to visit your website, Tim, just go ahead and give that out.
Easy. It's lovepointvineyards.com. We're also
Perfect.
on Facebook and other areas, so feel free. We'll be open April 1st, so not long.
Okay. Absolutely, guys. The wine and the view together is just spectacular. So you definitely have to get out there. Even if you're just on your way to the beach or back, what a great pit stop off of Route 50 to stop there at the winery. And Kristin, I have a question that I just popped in my head. So tell me if I'm totally crazy, but if somebody is listening to Tim and Karen's story and maybe they have a dream of starting their own vineyard or winery, are there any incentives or any help from the state of Maryland to help? Because to me, what a great use of the gorgeous land we have. I'd rather see, another winery than another strip mall. That's just me. But is there any incentive from the state or any help for people that say, you know what? I think I'm going to start a winery.
There was recently just a grant for people for that exact scenario to get started. And that was through the University Extension Program. And so I would
Perfect.
highly recommend anybody who's starting out to start with Extension. They have a lot of great resources there. And then follow up with the Maryland Department of Ag because you'll need some permits. So make sure that you do that side too. But yeah, there's a lot of resources. Of course, grants come and go, so it's always great to check. But like I said, this past year they actually just had ones for those purposes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Tim, I was just thinking real quick because we didn't touch on food pairings on this one. This Norway, I think I'm saying that right, is so unique. I think this might be the first one that I've tasted. So that's kind of exciting. But I could totally see this with a pork tenderloin on the grill, even with the salmon, if you're trying to get more fish in your diet. Because it's lighter, you could do it with a meat, but you could also do it with a meatier fish. What's your favorite?
I think it goes with, barbecues. It's served, slightly chilled, not warm, but not cold like a white wine. And so, again, that's all people's general taste. But your lighter, dark meats will go well with it. Duck, for example. The darker fish is also a good pairing. Pastas, any kind of pastas would go well with this, especially the spaghetti base sauces.
Love that. Well, guys, I'm so excited. Of course, Maryland Wine Month is till the end of March. So we're going to keep on marching on. This coming weekend is the Maryland Wine Experience that Kristin, you gave out all the information. There's still some tickets left for that. But get out there, visit your local wineries, or just grab a bottle of Maryland wine at your shop and pair it with, whatever you think is fabulous. Last week, we had Karen McNeil from the Wine Bible, if you've ever seen or used that book. And she's part of a whole effort that starts on the 23rd of March called Share and Pair Sundays. So you can keep your Maryland wine pairings up even into April and May. Just every Sunday, share a Maryland wine with somebody that you know, like, or love, and pair it with something fabulous. Hopefully from Maryland, but you choose. But guys, thank you so much for being on the Sipping Point. Tim, I think you have some parting words here.
I would just like to offer one other wine that's kind of unique for Maryland, and that's a sparkling wine. You don't see it very often, and we make it the traditional champagne method. It's very laborious. You can't call it champagne unless it's made in Champagne, but it's worth it. And it's great for celebrations or gifts and graduations or anything you want to celebrate. The sparklings work best, and it's one of my favorites here.
And we should have people know that in Maryland, our wineries do make sparkling wines, and I've had some of yours, and they are delicious. So when you get out to Love Point, ask for the bubblies, and I'm sure Tim or Karen will set you up. Guys, thank you so much. Just, I appreciate you coming on and telling us all about Maryland Wine Month.
Thank you.
So much. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.